I feel like even Tippy understands, sort of like, all right, this is when you have to be quiet. And, you know,
yeah.
hopefully she does understand.
She can join, she can practice, no problem.
Yeah,
Yeah.
indeed. Well, I'll start with a little bit of an introduction for those of you guys who are here now. My name's Andrea Marcum, and this is a little class and info session about the teacher training that we're going to do in partnership with Karma Cologne, and half of it, the first half will be in January and online, and the second half of it will be in March and at Karma Cologne. So I'm really excited about this hybrid situation. I think it's like the best of both worlds. I just finished doing an all online teacher training for YogaWorks that ended like 2 weeks ago, and it was great. And I understand how people sometimes have trepidation, like, oh, if it's online, am I really getting my money's worth? And the answer is absolutely. And I believe that this kind of teaching is here to stay, and certainly is sort of the primary option, definitely in the US and I think elsewhere, for training. So if you're interested in being a teacher, you're going to need to kind of learn how to teach in this kind of a platform too. If you ever do my classes on YouTube, I would be practicing on that mat the whole time. This is going to be a different situation because I want to give you a feel for what it's like when we do the teacher trainings. We typically start a day with a practice, and that practice is anywhere between 2 and 2.5, 3 hours. It is also not quite the same intensity as my YouTube, so fear not. But what we do is we integrate what we're going to talk about in terms of alignment and anatomy and sequencing into the practice so that you really embody it. And it's the kind of thing that we repeat and repeat and repeat, so it just becomes a part of your fabric. The YogaWorks recipe for sequencing, the alignment awareness, and it really breaks things wide open. So if you're mostly interested in this to deepen your practice, excellent. I would say it's like 50-50, honestly, when we do teacher trainings. 50% of the people have no interest in teaching, and then the other half might. And sometimes that switches over where people start thinking, oh, maybe I do want to teach actually after all. So anyway, we're going to start this practice lying in Shavasana. Isn't that good? Sounds like a pretty good, we're off to a good start. Then I'm going to wake you up in an hour. No. So Shavasana is actually like the #1 posture to start a practice in. It's accessible to everybody. It's the perfect place to stop so that we can start. Feel the earth underneath you, the rise and the fall of your breath, and maybe you even sense the beating of your heart. And when we stop, we start to become more present, aware of where we really are right now. And maybe we can even begin to catch a whiff of what's called santosha, a deep rumbling of contentment that has nothing to do with our accomplishments, the roles that we play in our lives, the cars that we drive, any of those things. It's a rumbling of being right where we are right now and feeling our aliveness of breath and heartbeat and connection. That's really what yoga is connection to ourselves, to one another, to everything around us. Let your breath start to happen in and out through the nose if that's possible. Pause for a beat at the top when you're full, and for a beat at the bottom when you're empty. And in this class opening, which is what we call it in the YogaWorks methodology, we establish our breath, our presence of mind. Atha Yoga Anushasanam. Now begins the practice of yoga. And you're going to take your arms overhead, shoulder distance apart with the palms facing one another. Just let them rest on the ground for now. But imagine that I said you can't get on the ride unless you grow a centimeter longer in both directions. So stretch, flex your feet, dig your heels into an imaginary wall, get longer and taller and taller and longer as you breathe into this new shape. Let your head remain on the ground. Lift your right arm 1 inch off your mat and your left leg 1 inch off your mat, and pause. Fill this new shape with breath. So you have the right arm 1 inch off your mat, the left leg 1 inch off your mat, and then feel as though you're tethering together your bottom ribs and your hip points. So instead of letting those bottom ribs flare to the sky, there's a contained feeling, a little trunk stability as we like to call it. And then let that experiment run on side 2. So release the left foot and the right arm to the ground. Take your left arm 1 inch off your mat. And then your right leg 1 inch off your mat. Keep growing longer and longer and longer. Tether together the bottom ribs and the hip points so that it feels like you're a long, strong vessel. Something that will be handy for what we call our peak pose, basically where our destination to this journey. And then release that down and take both arms 1 inch off of your mat. Flex your hands like you're stopping traffic. And then flex through your feet and lift both of your legs just 1 inch off your mat. Tether together the bottom ribs and the hip points. And now we feel like a little bit more oomph than you might think. It's a little bit more challenging than one might think. Grow longer, 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 stronger, stronger, stronger. This is what we call a preparatory pose. It has component parts to our peak. 3 more breaths here. Great. Lower down and roll over onto your belly. So just roll on over onto your belly and take your arms in front of you like you just did, but now you're upside down or right side up, depending on how you want to think about it. Keep your forehead down on the ground, lift your arms 1 inch off your mat. So just let the forehead stay down and lift both arms 1 inch off your mat, palms face each other like you're a superhero. Lengthen through your legs, press down into the tops of the feet until your kneecaps come off your mat. Lift the low belly towards the spine so you feel fully supported like you did a moment ago when we did this facing upright. And then perhaps you lift and lengthen your legs. If that's too much on your low back, then decide to keep the tops of the feet pressing and really nerd out on feeling your breath underneath the ground here. So your ribs, the muscles of the diaphragm, and then last couple of breaths here. Great. Lower down and situate your hands next to your floating ribs. So slide your hands so that they meet right next to your bottommost ribs. Stay long and tall as you go forward with your chest and up and come into a Cobra Pose. Great. In your Cobra Pose, press the tops of your feet until your kneecaps come off your mat. For a moment, lift your hands off your mat. Just let them hover 1 inch and you're going to feel that, again, cylindrical strength. So 360 degrees of strength. Remember that as you place your hands back down again and either deepen this Cobra or let it become upward facing dog. And upward facing dog is just a lifted version of your Cobra. So once you lift into up dog, the tops of the feet and your hands are the only 2 things touching the ground. Let the collarbones feel like they're smiling open. Great. Lower back down. Come into a child's pose. Sit back, hips onto the heels. And take a few moments. Let your arms reach out in front of you. You're in this child's pose. And activate your arms. So hands press down, forearms lift up off your mat, outer upper arms hug in. And the inner part of your upper arms is spinning to the sky. Lift your head so that you can look at your hands. And as you look at your hands, make sure especially the inner part of your hand is pressing, the circumference of both palms are pressing. You're reaching into some clay or mud with your hands, your fingers. Let the forearms lift actively away from the ground. Keep that as you make this downward facing dog. Curl your toes under Adho Mukha Svanasana, downward facing dog. And I bet it feels pretty delicious to do a little bit of foot pedaling or shifting, just sussing out what's there for this first go around. And then I'd like you to once again feel that you're building it from the ground up. So the hands are spread wide, that inner part of the hand, the webbing between the index and the thumb, and your fingers are reaching into the mud. There's a lift of the forearms, outer upper arms are hugging in, and then your head relaxes. So basically your arms and your ears are aligning. Take in an inhale while we're here. On your exhale, come high on your tiptoes and walk forward, feet all the way in between the hands. Inhale, heart extends forward, Ardha Uttanasana. Exhale, fold it back in, Uttanasana. Inhale, reach all the way up to the sky, and then pause once you're reaching with your arms shoulder distance apart and the palms facing each other. It's the same thing that we did lying on our backs. Instead of looking at your hands, look straight ahead, let your chin be parallel to the ground. Turn your palms to the sky like you're now stopping traffic up into the ceiling, which frankly, these days, I think that there's a lot of traffic we would like to stop from on high. And then see if you can grow taller, taller, taller here between the palms of your hands and the bottoms of your feet, like you're doing a handstand on the ceiling. And then create a prayer in front of your heart and pause. Tadasana, mountain pose. Think ears aligning with shoulders, aligning with hips and heels. This is the bedrock for all yoga postures. Great. Inhale, arms reach up overhead. Exhale, hinge at the hips and fold forward. Inhale, look forward, heart forward. Step, step, plank position, palms on your mat, and pause. Now, if you'd like, you can drop your knees down. This is the same thing you did lying on your belly, lying on your back, and standing just now. See if you can find Tadasana, thigh bones pressed to the sky. Heels are pressing back. You're pushing the ground away and keeping your hands in the mud. The crown of your head extends forward. There's integrity, core work at play here. We'll stay here for 3. Really work the legs a lot. For 2, Adho Mukha Svanasana, downward facing dog. And I think where Ani and Nikki are, it's a dog, a literal down dog, looking at dogs. Great. Now, the first time that we came to down dog, we did a lot of foot pedaling. Let's see if we can minimize that. It's kind of brave to get still. It's actually a bit tricky to get still. 3 breaths here in the stillness and in that santosha, rumbling of contentment. No need to rush ahead. No need to ruminate about the past. When you're empty of air, high on your tiptoes, walk forward, feet all the way in between the hands. Inhale, heart reaches forward. Exhale, fold it back in. Inhale, rise and reach all the way up to the sky. And then bring your hands into a prayer in front of your heart, Tadasana. Great. Continuing into our general warm-up here. Inhale, arms reach up. Exhale, fold it forward. Inhale, look forward. As you exhale, step, step, plank position once again. Now in your plank position, bring your knees to the ground directly beneath where they are in space right now. Extend your heart forward. Feel that your low belly is lifted. Take a Chaturanga here with your knees on your mat and see if you can hover your belly off the ground. So bend your elbows and pause when your shoulders, elbows, and hips are on the same line, and feel your elbows against your body without crushing your body. Just feel it there. And this too is a little bit more challenging than one might think. You're probably ready to come to your belly all the way down. Great. Uncurl your toes and come into a cobra or an upward facing dog. The choice is yours. Adho Mukha Svanasana, downward facing dog. And a few cycles of breath here. High onto your tiptoes, bend your knees, empty your lungs, walk or float, feet all the way in between the hands. Inhale, Ardha Uttanasana, looking forward. Exhale, Uttanasana, folding in. Inhale, rise and reach all the way up to the sky. And then pause here in your mountain, nurturing some stillness and majesty. Super. Surya Namaskara A. Inhale, arms reach. Exhale, fold it forward. Inhale, look forward, heart forward. Step, step, plank position. Chaturanga, knees can go up or down this time. Urdhva Mukha Svanasana, your choice of a cobra or an up dog. Adho Mukha Svanasana, downward facing dog. And we take a few breaths here or luxuriating in a child's pose anytime you'd like. High on your tiptoes, when you're empty, walk or float, feet all the way in between the hands. Inhale, heart reaches. Exhale, fold in. Inhale, all the way up, reach to the sky. And then bring your hands into a prayer. Great, a couple more like that. Inhale, arms swoop up. Exhale, fold. Inhale, look forward, heart forward. Step, some of you might like to float lightly to Chaturanga. Inhale, upward facing or cobra. Adho Mukha Svanasana, downward facing dog, and a few breaths here. High on your tiptoes. When you're empty, walk it or float it soundlessly, feet between the hands. Inhale, look forward and lengthen. Exhale, fold it back in. Inhale, rise and reach to the sky. And then hands in a prayer in front of your heart. One last round of Surya A. Inhale, arms reach. Exhale, fold. Inhale, Ardha Uttanasana. Exhale your way to Chaturanga Dandasana, walking or floating. Urdhva Mukha Svanasana. Adho Mukha Svanasana, downward facing dog. We're going to try to keep our bodies aligned the way that they are, because not to give away the surprise, but our peak pose would prefer that we, when we lift the right leg right now, lift it from its inseam and keep the hips squared off. So instead of opening up the hip and doing the things that we sometimes do to stretch, just let it be that you're pressing into the mud with your hands, you're feeling the inner part of your hand lift, and that the right leg lifts from its inseam. So it feels like those belly back bends that we did. And then allow the left hip to draw back. Really good. Now come forward to a plank position with your right knee to your chest. And if it feels better to you to lower the back knee, then it feels better to me that way too. Now, really feel that you've got some core work happening, that your hands are in your mud, and that the shoulders are over the wrists, and then just stay for a couple more breaths if you don't mind. Step your right foot in between your hands. Spin the back foot flat onto the ground. Inch the right foot a couple of inches to the left, so back foot is flat. And then take your right forearm onto your thigh and left arm up to the sky. So back foot is flat and you're doing a Parsvakonasana that's modified. Right forearm across the thigh, left arm up to the sky. So side angle pose, using your forearm on your thigh. So even if you often touch the ground here, I'm going to ask you to take your forearm onto your thigh and find a little bit more buoyancy. Externally rotate that top arm up and overhead. And then feel a line from your left fingertips all the way to the outer edge of your left foot, like you're standing in that Tadasana, like you're standing in that pose that we did with our arms overhead. Great. Just for a tiny moment, take both arms overhead, shoulder distance. So take that right arm and let it join. And there's a lot required to sustain that. If it's too much, return your forearm to your thigh. But notice how much power is in what you're doing. And keep rotating the right ribs to the sky. Great. Warrior two, all the way upright. If you can, keep a deep bend in that front knee. If you want or need to straighten and rebend, that's not against the rules. You want to take care of yourself here. Honor where it feels good for you, where the sweet spot is. Stiram Sukhamasana, steadiness and sweetness. Last 3 breaths just like this. So this is an externally rotated pose. It's part of the YogaWorks sequencing recipe that you will find out in the teacher training. Cartwheel your hands to your mat, either vinyasa or feel free to skip the Chaturanga up dog, down dog anytime you'd like. And head right to down dog instead to save your energy. Or like I said, make it a child's pose anytime. Again, we'll inhale and lift the left leg back behind us, and we're going to keep the intelligence of it being really sturdy. So when you lift it from its inseam, feel an evenness in both hands, and then allow the right hip to draw back and the right heel to sink down a little bit. And you start to feel like there is stability as opposed to chasing a bunch of mobility, meaning not a whole bunch of flexibility, just kind of a strong launching pad, should it ever become one. Come to plank, let your left knee come to your chest. This too, part of a potential launching pad. Push the ground away a lot with your hands. Notice that you have to really be shoulders over wrists, breathing and core strengthening. 2 more here. Then place that left foot in between your hands, spin the back foot flat, our modified side angle on the second side. Left forearm across the thigh, right arm up to the sky. There's a sense of the left heel being heavy into the earth and almost tractioning back to your right foot. So we build this from the ground up. Cut the left hip underneath you, as if it too were interested in being attracted to that right heel. Top arm externally rotates and reaches up and overhead here. And now you lengthen the bottom ribs and rotate them to the sky. Experiment with the bottom arm reaching shoulder distance also. Can you find santosha, a deep-seated sense of contentment, even in the fire of this challenge? And maybe that's as simple as returning your left forearm onto your thigh. Keep cutting that left hip in, come upright, Virabhadrasana 2, Warrior 2, all the way upright. If you wanted to or needed to, you could straighten and then rebend that front knee anytime. Gaze out over your left middle finger and feel how strong you are as a warrior. On your mat, but also when you roll up your mat, all of these discoveries come with you from your mat into your life. 2 more breaths here. And then cartwheel your hands to your mat. Either take the vinyasa or leave it and go right to down dog and conserve your energy for the promised aforementioned peak pose. Come high onto your tiptoes, empty your lungs, walk or float, feet all the way in between the hands. Inhale, heart extends. Exhale, fold yourself back in. Utkatasana, chair pose. Sit deep, reach high. Either feet together, toe knuckles touching, or a little bit of distance between your feet is fine. But shift the weight into the heels. Make it so it's possible, if you wanted to lift all of your toes off the ground. And then when they lightly come back to the ground, you keep that sensibility of heels planting, low belly lifting. All the discoveries that we made when we were lifting arms and legs off our mat when we were lying down, come with you here. Keep the arms lifted, just straighten your legs and pause. Feel the power of that fierce Utkatasana with you now in the standing pose you're doing, and bring your hands into a prayer in front of your heart. Maybe even close your eyes and pause. Great. Surya Namaskara B. Bend the knees. Inhale, Utkatasana. Exhale, fold forward, Uttanasana. Inhale, look forward, Ardha Uttanasana. Step to plank or float to Chaturanga, or maybe skip the vinyasa and head right to down dog. Without lifting a leg this time, just step right foot forward, back foot spins on its side. 1 breath up to Warrior 1. And then hands to your mat. Step back, swim through a vinyasa, or step it right into downward facing dog and skip the vinyasa. Left foot steps forward, back foot spins flat, Virabhadrasana A. Gorgeous, hands to your mat through a vinyasa or straight into downward facing dog. And now we're in the guts of the warm-up and really getting into the standing poses as per the YogaWorks sequencing recipe. You're probably feeling the effects of it in your body. You're warm, you're excited about this peak pose I keep talking about. High on your tiptoes, empty your lungs, walk or float, feet to the hands. Inhale, look forward. Exhale, fold it back in. Utkatasana, bend your knees. Stand it up, hands at a prayer or arms along your side. Tadasana. We'll do another round of those. Bend the knees. Inhale, Utkatasana. Exhale, Uttanasana. Inhale, Ardha Uttanasana, Chaturanga Dandasana, step or float. Urdhva Mukha Svanasana, Adho Mukha Svanasana, right foot steps, Virabhadrasana. On your exhale, hands to your mat, Vinyasa or straight to Adho Mukha Svanasana, straight to down dog. Left foot steps, Virabhadrasana. Dismount through a vinyasa or straight into downward facing dog. Stay in down dog or child's pose for a few breaths. Now inhale your right leg behind you. This time indulge opening up the hip. Bend the knee. Do whatever feels good as a stretch, but notice if you were going to try to kick up into a handstand, this would be a pretty bad idea. This would not give you a very good way into your handstand. So square off like we did previously and take a look down your body and see that all of your toes are facing the ground on that right leg. So straighten the right leg back behind you and see that all those toes are facing the ground. Right, come to plank, right knee to the chest. Step your right foot next to your right thumb. Left hand on a blocker on the ground, right arm up to the sky. So you're taking an easy twist and opening. Power up that back leg as if it were still standing in a plank position. And know that if you prefer that back knee down on the ground, you're welcome to do it that way. Top arm up and overhead. And it becomes a little interesting to keep the integrity of the back leg working. Rotate the bottom ribs to the sky a little bit more. 3 breaths here. Swoop your right arm alongside your body. Let your chest stay parallel to the front thigh. And then let your left arm come alongside your body as well. So your chest is hovering above your right thigh, parallel to the ground. And we pause. If you'd like, and if it feels okay in your body, reach both arms forward so that your arms and your ears align like when we were on our belly doing a back bend. You're going to step it up to Virabhadrasana 3. So step up and balance on your right leg in a letter T. You might choose to put your hands on a block here or run the arms alongside you like we did a moment ago in that lunge. If it feels nice to reach the arms in front of you, that's an option too. So you decide. You're the expert of your own body, and I am merely your guide. Bring your hands to your mat or your block. Step your feet together or hip distance. Chair pose here at the front edge of your mat. Sit deep and reach high. And then stand and pause in your mountain, hands in a prayer or arms along your side. Pause. Great, bend your knees. Inhale, Utkatasana. In your Utkatasana, come onto your tippy toes and just see if you can find some balance. Mindful of your knees, bend your knees deeper, deeper, deeper till you come into a full squat and let the knees fall open. Malasana squat. Place your palms flat on the ground like you observed when you were doing your down dog and your child's pose. And if you have Bakasana, crow pose in your practice, climb your knees up the backs of your arms, look forward and take a crow pose. If you don't, just fake it till you make it. So keep your hands on the ground, bring your knees towards the outside of your arms, and imagine taking one heel and maybe even the other heel off your mat. You're looking forward a bit so you know where you are in space. And all of us are going to end up the same place, which is downward facing dog. You can toss it back from your arm balance, you can step it back, take a vinyasa or skip it, but where we meet down the path is the same place, downward facing dog. Maybe even child's pose, and we pause. Inhale your left leg back behind you, and at first, open the hip, bend the knee, do the stretch. And note, if you were going to try to do a handstand, especially like right here in the middle of the room where it might be a little scarier and harder to balance, this would be a bad alignment choice. Not that it's a bad alignment, just for that particular structure. And then square off, keep the left leg lifting straight back behind you. Take a look at all of your toes facing the ground and feel your hands in your mud. Much better idea were you to kick into a handstand. Come to plank, left knee to the chest, shoulders over the wrists, we pause. And then step your left foot next to your left thumb. Right hand is on your block or on the ground, and left arm up to the sky as you take your twist now. Fire up the back leg like it's doing a plank position. Really be aware of what's called proprioception, where you are in space, how it is that you're placing your body. Top arm up and overhead. It's what's called an external rotation. The thumb turns higher than the pinky finger. And all this terminology will be something that becomes second nature to you in this training. Now really feel both sides of the waist get long. Fire up that back leg even more. If you want to put the knee on the ground, that's fine. Swoop the left arm alongside your body. Keep your chest where it is in space, parallel to the ground, and then add right arm alongside your body. So you're in a lunge with your chest hovering just above your thigh. Great. If it's feeling okay for your low back, both arms now reach in front of you, palms face each other. We're still in the lunge. And then step it up into your version of Warrior 3. That can be hands on a block, arms along your side, or the arms still reaching out in front of you. It's a powerful, strong pose that is borrowing from what we did at the very beginning of the practice on our belly and on our back. 3 breaths here. Feel free to use your block. Hands on your block or on the ground, feet together or hip distance, Utkatasana chair pose. Again, onto your tiptoes, come to a full squat, knees drop out to the side. Hands flat on your mat. Just experiment with bringing your knees to the outsides of your arms, looking forward and thinking about balancing with just one foot on the ground maybe. Look forward a lot so that you know where you are in space. It takes some of the fear factor out of it. And then step back or float back, take a vinyasa or don't, but downward facing dog is our meetup spot. And from our down dog, walk your hands to your feet, step your feet a minimum of hip distance apart, maybe even wider, and slide your hands underneath your feet so that you're covering your hand completely. So fingers face towards the heel, the top of your hand is on the ground, and then it's like you're massaging or playing the piano with your toes on your wrist, and then let your head hang. And notice, can you find the santosha, a deep-seated sense of contentment, even now? Chelsea, I love the kitty right there in front of the camera. It's an animal-orama. For the few of you who have your cameras on, there's a lot of animals per capita. And then slide your hands out from underneath your feet. Bring your hands to your hips, firm through your feet and your belly, and come all the way upright. You're going to go to a wall space. If you don't have a wall space, that's fine. It doesn't have to be a lot. And when you get to your wall space, take downward facing dog with your heels on the wall. So take a down dog with your heels on the wall. I can see people trying to figure out where there's space. Buddhas are being moved for a good purpose. So downward facing dog with your heels on the wall, and then take a look at your hands and see that your hands are still in the mud. And The peak pose that we're making our way towards is handstand. So a lot of the stuff that we did had component parts and preparatory pose moves in it. If available, start to walk your feet up your wall a little bit until they come to the height of your hip. And if that's scary, fear not. If you need to bring your mat for underneath your hands, I understand. Couple breaths here. And then step off the wall and take a forward fold. If you want a little bit more accurate alignment, if you sit on the ground with your butt against the wall and notice where your feet are, a leg's distance, that might help you figure out where to place your hands for this L pose. You don't have to go anywhere beyond down dog with your heels against the wall. And you could even do what's called puppy dog, which is hands on the wall and feet on the ground. Honestly, the animals are just the best. I've got a really close up of Chelsea's cat. And then place your hands where your feet are right now and come back into that L pose one more time. And we'll play a little bit further with the L pose. Of course, you are not obliged to do anything that makes you uncomfortable, especially when you're here in your home and I'm not right in the room with you. Think about lifting your right leg to the sky like we did when you were in three-legged downward facing dog, but now you're upright. And remember the alignment that we thought would probably not be a very good idea for handstand, and see if you can find the alignment that we thought was a good idea. Really good. Right foot back on the wall. If you've got the juice to take the left leg while we're here, great, or else just come off the wall and you can do that a second round. Let everything feel square. Fantastic. Left foot on the wall, wander off your wall and pause in a forward fold, or maybe even in a child's pose. Now I'm going to spotlight Nikki and Ani. No pressure, but now the spotlight's on you. And one of you guys is going to take a down dog with your hands 6 inches away from the wall, facing the wall. So you guys who are not, so iPad and Silky and people who I'm not actually seeing, now you get to see a close-up of Nikki. So here she is spotlit, and see that her hands are just 6 inches away from the wall. And remember when we came into a plank position and she shifted her shoulders over her wrist, she's going to do that here. Then she's going to look at where the wall and the ceiling meet and step whichever foot forward that she doesn't kick into a handstand with. So step 1 foot forward, and then keep looking at where the wall and the ceiling meet, and she'll kick up into a handstand. And it looks like maybe Ani is ready to spot her. There we are. You may or may not have a spot. She has not only a spotter, but also a score, like the judge right there is scoring. The dog next to her is scoring. And the tail is wagging, so you did well. You scored well on your handstand. Excellent. So these spotlights and this way of working are a lot of the ways in which we would work in the virtual part of the teacher training, where we spotlight someone. There's also something called breakout rooms on Zoom. And so you would actually have a couple of you practice teaching each other sometimes during the teacher training. So just to give you a little feel for, it's actually like a really intimate way of working together. Like you really get a lot of verbal skills, teaching people how to do it without, being able to cheat and show them, the way that you could. And so let's play a little bit with handstand. If you have the guts to take to do this on camera, I'd love to see you. No judgment if you don't. So if you want to keep your camera off and play around, it's fine. You can do either the L pose or you can do that handstand. And then when you're done, we're going to meet in child's pose. So I'm just going to give you like 2 minutes to play around with our peak pose. You can watch Nikki once again if you want to. We're still spotlit here. That was excellent. The judge is still scrutinizing. The judge is torn now between Ani and Nikki, but they're both getting a tail wag, so good. Great. When you've had about enough of your, what we call a peak pose, and this is, a much shorter version of what you would do in a teacher training. So we're making it a mini short curt version. And then I'm going to take these ladies off spotlight and we'll come into a child's pose together. And then just pause for a second. So the peak is that it is exactly what it suggests. It's the crescendo up to like the probably most difficult pose with all the different component parts. So that's the things that we found in poses that weren't handstand, but sort of looked a little bit or felt like one. You're going to slide out onto your belly and then lie down onto your back. Bend your knees and place your feet hip distance on your mat. Great, and then lift your hips up. Interlace your shoulders underneath, interlace your hands and snuggle your shoulders underneath you. Sometimes a nice way to do bridge, so this is bridge pose, is to hold your mat and feel like you're pulling your mat away from your head and pulling your mat apart a little bit. And then lower down and place one hand on your heart and one hand on your low belly. Feel the rise and fall of your breath and the beating of your heart. Some of you might have an Urdhva Dhanurasana. So you'll flip your palms next to your ears, pause gently at the top of your head, plug the shoulders in their sockets, come all the way up into full back bend. But bridge that we just did could be repeated, and that's perfect. Think toes in and heels out. And my friends who are in the full back bend, you still have your hands in your mud. And then chin to your chest, carefully, gently lower down. We'll take a supine twist, so a twist here on your back. Pick up your hips, shift them to the right. Cross your right knee over your left knee and let both knees drop to the left. If you don't want to do the leg crossing, that's fine. Just spill the legs over to the left with your hips adjusted a little to the right and pause. This is what's called a transitional or neutralizing pose. Coming out of back bends, doing a gentle, easy twist before we go on to something that would be a counter pose. And then come to center, scoot your hips left, let your knees spill to the right. You can cross the left knee on top if that feels good to you. Chelsea, the cuteness does not end in your home. One cute creature after another. And then come back to center and plant your feet on your mat. Cross your right ankle on top of your left knee and thread the needle. So reclining pigeon, right hand through the space. I think it's sort of nice to remain lying on the ground. If you feel like it's just not a practice, if you don't do a single pigeon or a double pigeon instead of what we're doing now, it wouldn't offend me for you to get up and do that instead. But a little gentle external rotation in the hips as we now are in the cool down portion of our sequencing. Let your jaw relax. See if you can find a little bit more of the santosha, rumbling of contentment, whether you kicked into a handstand or you felt like it was the perfect day for your handstand, or it was a challenging day for your handstand. That santosha is something that's there regardless of accomplishment, regardless of or independent of any sort of thought of performance. We are much more than our performance or our poses. And then place your feet on your mat and switch sides with this left ankle on top of right knee. We thread the needle. And here as well, there's no force. There's just that sweet spot of sensation where you feel it working. And where you can let the fire that we built through the more dynamic part of the practice bring you to a stiller state, a quieter place where moksha, liberation, lives. A lot of the arc of this practice is to build tapas, heat and intensity, sort of getting the crazy out of our muscles and mind, so that when we lie back down again, there's a bit more space, body, mind, and spirit. And from here, either hug both knees into your chest or take a happy baby, which is holding the outsides of your feet and drawing the knees towards the armpits. And it can be quite lovely to rock a little bit side to side here. And then place the bottoms of your feet together and let your knees fall out to the side so you're on the floor. The outer edges of your feet are on the ground, your feet are together. Supta Baddha Konasana, so just let go of your feet. Bring the bottoms of your feet together. Let your knees be on the ground out to the side. So just a relaxing place to be. Feet on the ground. And place one hand on your heart and one hand on your low belly for a moment. Draw your knees together and reverse that. Step your feet wide, let your knees stay together. So it's like your knock-kneed. Lift your hips up, elongate your tailbone towards your heels. A gentle way of feeling that you grew that centimeter we spoke of at the top of the practice, and then release your hips to your mat and spill out across the floor and into your Shavasana. You might like to cover your eyes with something or cover your body with something. We come full circle and we end where we started. The end is where we start from. And really let yourself, as if lying in a warm bath, be bathed in santosha, contentment, a deep, nurturing, juicy sense of contentment. Letting go body and mind and spirit. Shavasana. And please stay very soft. Allow your breath to deepen. Maybe light movements to your fingers and toes. Could be that you inhale and stretch your arms overhead, just like we did at the very beginning, but now the end is where we start from. And we go from Shavasana, corpse pose, to a fetal pose. So bend your knees and roll to either side. Evidence that the end is where we start from. Pause on your side. Then bring yourself up to a comfortable way to sit. And once you're seated, fold a prayer in front of your heart. Bow your chin towards your chest. Maybe let your eyes close. And then lift your chin, open your eyes. Namaste. Thank you so much, you guys. So that's a tiny little short snippet of the ways in which the YogaWorks methodology sequences. It's very straightforward. It's super intelligent, quite simple. And thanks, Ida. It is also based on, YogaWorks was established 30 years ago, 30 plus now, I believe, years ago. It was started by Matthias Rate, Chuck Miller, and Alan Finger. Really amazing teachers in their own right. They started it and based it on Ashtanga and Iyengar. So the methodology comes from some really solid sources. And then also that in combination with modern science and methodology. So that's where it comes from. That's the sequencing part of it. And then there are teachers like Lisa Walford, one of the best Iyengar teachers in the world, who have then contributed to these manuals. You will get these manuals when you do the training. It is definitely so much information. A lot of times people who come and do the teacher training at YogaWorks who have already done a 200-hour are surprised by how in-depth it is. And I think that's really important to note, especially now that we're online and there's so many teacher trainings for you to choose from. I understand that there's everything out there. I really believe in the YogaWorks teacher training because I do think it's so thorough. It's a lot to chew on. You will not just leave with a certification, you'll leave with wisdom and knowledge and a hunger for more. And I think that that's so important. If you want to be a teacher, you really are excited about being a forever student is what it means. I am too. Every time I lead a teacher training, I learn something. And it's exciting to know that you're never going to get bored with stuff. And that's, I think, really like the big news of doing a teacher training is that you're never going to get bored with it. At 200 hours, the entry level, it means that you'll develop skills for teaching. It's not so much about perfecting, but it will expose you to all the different modalities of yoga and the ways in which you might actually want to specialize. And I've found, especially in this last training, so many people made discoveries that got them excited about an avenue of yoga that had not occurred to them when they simply went to level 2-3 classes at the studio all the time. It's a deeper dive. The practices that we do, maybe you got a little bit of a feel from it from our mini class, really do carry on the deconstruction within those 2.5 and 3 hour practices. And then in this teacher training, our January schedule will be Friday, Saturday, Sunday for 5 hours in the evening your time. Friday and Sunday, we will start with the practice. Saturday, we will do other things like those breakout rooms, talking about alignment, philosophy, and then the last part of the last 3 hours of Saturday will be anatomy. And your anatomy will be with the person who literally wrote the book on anatomy. She is the person that wrote the manual, named Olivia Berry. So you'll do anatomy with Olivia on Saturdays. And then when I come in March, it will be a different format. It will be the immersion format where we do 2 weeks of in-person together in a row, and then you're done. So it's a nice break in between for you to digest everything that we get through, and then to have the in real life moment later on. Chelsea can hop in, I think, maybe with some logistics of things, the pricing, the early bird, all that kind of thing. And any questions you have, for sure put them in the chat or just raise your hand, and I'm happy to answer them.
Yeah, so we got one question. So do we have to attend online meetings or will there be replays? So the online classes will be recorded just as this is. However, you can miss up to 27 hours. So you can miss up to 27 hours of classroom hours. That said, you will need to make them up. So if throughout the online course, we can obviously send you the recordings. The in-person will not be recorded, obviously. So that we will have a different makeup policy, but the online portions will all be recorded, yes.
And that is actually a handy thing with these onlines, is that they're recorded, and so you can, if you have to miss something, go back and get a pretty accurate read on it.
And then somebody else, and March will be in person only. Yes, so that's the benefit of this training. Like Andrea said, you guys are getting the best of both worlds. You're getting online right now and then in person in a few months. And so you really are getting, the best. But I will say I've been a program advisor with YogaWorks for several years. And obviously when this happened, nobody knew what to do. We quickly went online, and some students were hesitant and they were like, am I going to be receiving, the same education, the same training? And everyone that completed it was so grateful that they did. They thought it was an amazing experience. And there's so many benefits to online. One is obviously Andrea saying that, the recording you can watch, and that's a great benefit. Another benefit is that the community you're making right now, while we are stuck at home, you're seeing this group every week or every, weekend, and that's such a beautiful thing. You're also, going to be getting a smaller class than you would in studio, which is really nice as well. So definitely, you are going to be getting an amazing experience, and students are just loving the online courses. And like Andrea said, she just finished one and nothing but amazing reviews. A few questions that I get that I just want to throw out there. I always get, am I good enough? I don't want to be a teacher. Those are questions that I get all the time. I took my training several years ago, not knowing what I wanted to do. And I took my training thinking, I don't know. I taught for a little and it wasn't for me, but I love yoga. I love YogaWorks, love the company. And I've been a program advisor for about 9 years now. So there's so many different routes you can go, whether it's just deepening your practice, whether it's becoming a teacher, whether it's just doing privates, whether it's doing corporate. There's so many available jobs, and there's so many avenues that you can go. And you don't need to know. That's the, one thing, that if you have the chance to take this training, and you can take it and decide later, which is absolutely okay. The other question that I always get is injuries and if I'm good enough. So you do not need to know how to do a certain pose, a handstand, a headstand. I still can't do a handstand in the middle of the room, and it doesn't matter, because I've learned that during these courses, that is not what this is about. I've learned so much about myself, and knowing that not to be hard on myself if I can't do that handstand in the middle of the room, because again, it's not what it's about. You need to protect your body, and you need to do what's best for you. So we just require a minimum of 6 months to a year of consistent practice. So that said, we just want to make sure that everyone is on the same page and nobody is going to get hurt. You guys all know, it sounds like, you know what a down dog is, things like that, just to make sure that Andrea isn't teaching to so many different levels. So as long as you have, some consistent practice and are familiar with the poses in your body, and you know that this is something that you want to do, then absolutely, that's okay. And oftentimes injuries, I always like to talk about injuries, because some students are like, oh, I have a bad back. Obviously, if the doctor, says no, then that's a no. But if you have something that you think would prohibit you, oftentimes it doesn't. And oftentimes the injuries that you have, like when I took my training, my low back hurt, and I was able to work around it in my body. And then when I did teach, I was able to teach better to those students who had the same injury. So it oftentimes helps you. It definitely does not hinder anything.
And it also contributes to the training, because you're going to have students, whether you're the one who's injured or has some sort of, like we had a couple of pregnant ladies for our last teacher training too. And then it makes it real. It's not just that you're looking in a textbook and saying, well, if this happens, this happens. You've got real people with real feedback. Just like for yourself, I'm not saying injuries are something that we want, but they're some of our best teachers. As Chelsea said, you become much better at teaching it because you have the experience of it. The same is to be said for, you know, poses that are hard for you to do. That's where you become the best teacher, because you empathize, you know all the different ways to pull it apart. If it's easy for you, then it's kind of hard to teach them sometimes. Like you haven't had to really go through the process of teaching them. There's a question in the chat about, is it me? Because there's mention of Olivia. And I mentioned, maybe you weren't here for it, Valentina, that Olivia is leading the anatomy part of it. So she will be on Saturdays for 3 hours. She actually led the anatomy for the teacher training I just finished, and they loved it. I mean, there's no better person. And she also, like, it's interactive. You're going to see some videos. She's going to have you move around a bit, find it in your own body. She'll do a very, like the spotlight video that we did. So there's a lot of tools that we're discovering that in some ways work better in this format, because it's so easy to share documents and videos here. Whereas like in a classroom, you can't figure out what wall to put it on, or, you know, sometimes those technology things don't translate. So we're really discovering a lot of amazing things, including we use something called Google Classroom, which is a great hub for everyone to talk. It's almost like a stream like Facebook for all the students to be informed and be connected. It's where you turn in your homework. It makes things super clear. We really are refining things, I feel, as a result of being digital in ways that we meant to maybe before, but you know, when the time comes, you really get to it. And I'm impressed. I really think that because I didn't have a lot of notice for that teacher training, we all sort of like jumped to it, and I jumped into a digital platform that I wasn't sure of, and I loved it. So, and I mean that genuinely. So I think it's a great thing. Obviously in person is lovely, and I can't wait to get back to it. Feels like forever ago. Here in California, it's me in my living room. That's it. We have not been able to go, even like you guys can in Europe, to studios, you know, where they're far apart. So something to look forward to.
Germany. Time for you to come. Yeah, we have 2 more questions. One was, if you book the training, will there be any discounts for classes at Cologne? It's something. Okay. Yes, there will be. Certainly what we plan is you get a discount for a 10-pass class, and we'll figure out what the discount exactly will be. And during your training, I think you get all the classes, you get your YogaWorks .com access anyway, which is great value. But if you want to come and practice in person, you can certainly come and practice at Cologne for discounted. And one other question is, early bird is available till end of September.
Yes, so that that $29.50 is if paid in full by September 30th. And I'm sorry, I don't know the conversion rate, but this is in US dollars. Then it's $31.50 by October 30th, and then it's $33.50 after. And I love that you just mentioned the YogaWorks classes. YogaWorks is a set of videos that are pre-recorded. So the benefit is you're up at 2 a.m., can't sleep, take a yoga class. They're all pre-recorded. So that's something that you will get access to for 3 months. The other thing that you do get that Andrea had said are all of the manuals. And those manuals, I still get students from 5 years ago. They're like, I moved and I can't find my manuals. You have to ship me new ones, because they are amazing. They're so thorough. You know, Andrea showed you, they're like this thick. And
I mean, this is just the asana manual. This is like every pose broken down with cues and actions. And I mean, it's super thorough. It's amazing. And these are resources for your life.
Yes. Yes. The other thing that I wanted to go over is the class taking requirement. So students are required to take 12 additional classes. That's, you know, you can start those once the program starts, so you have time. And obviously we're flexible. You know, I understand things come up, and we get that as well. Do you guys have any other questions for us? You can chat. You can.
I had one question the other day that I can that I can bring up from a student that asked about the training, and that was about if the training in March, the in-person training, will not happen. What are the other occasions? Will it be pushed out? Will it be online? Can there be a refund? Can it be switched to another online at some other point for YogaWorks? What would be the options? Do you know?
So we have a few, you know, this is something that we had discussed, and obviously things change daily. So it sounds like it is better for you guys than it is where we are. Never in a million years would I be imagining I'd be, you know, my second grader would be still at homeschool learning. So we never know. That said, that, you know, once it is time to go in person, there's only 2 weeks. So that we could keep online, or if we can't move Andrea, if we can't fly Andrea down there, then, and you guys are in a safe spot where they can still come to the studio, they can still have that community if that's fine with you guys. And again, the social distancing obviously is the most important. So as long as it's a safe practice, which I know that you guys have that large space, at least the group can be together, and we can put down a screen or a computer or something so Andrea can be, you know, still live. It's not what we were hoping for, but again, I think we won't know for a few months. But I definitely think at that point there will only be a few more classes. We wouldn't cancel it, so there would be no, you know, canceling, they don't have a diploma, nothing like that. We would figure out plan B.
Cool. Yeah.
And it's funny, I think that so many people, like at that point, they're going to be so used to the online format and so surprised at how much they're just really loving it, that I think it's not going to really matter if, you know, if worse comes to worse and Andrea can't come down. I think still they'll get that community.
Yeah. I know for me, for one, I'm very much wanting to be there. Cool. Any other questions from anybody? You can always reach out to us with questions for sure. You can reach out and watch this again or do this class again or any combination. That is also another thing that's really great about digital, is that it's very easy to have a teacher meeting. Do you know what I mean? Like you can meet up with me at a moment's notice. It's not like we have to try to coordinate where we're going to meet and then get there. And, you know, so I did that a lot. I did like little 10-minute check-ins with a lot of the people from the teacher training that I just finished. And it's really helpful. It's really nice to have such easy access with each other, such back and forth. So you can start that before we even do the teacher training, if that appeals to you.
I just put in my email for anybody who has any questions, that if they want it offline, that's absolutely okay. That's my email. As we mentioned, the early bird is coming up in a few days. So I will email you guys all, but if you have any questions, hearing both of my kids coming in now. And we understand that those things happen too, the benefit of online.
Hi, Tippy.
I know. Tippy has made an entrance. All right, you guys. Well, thank you so very much.
Thank you so much.
Great. And let us know, you guys, if you've got any questions. Thanks, Chelsea. Thanks, everybody.
We're excited, and we'll keep this up. All right. Thank you so much. Take care. See you soon.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Hi there.
You can say bye. Say bye.
She's really tired, Chelsea.
You know.
Oh, God. So cute.
Hi, girls. Sheila says hi.
Bye. Take care. Bye-bye.